Have you ever really thought about the names of the plastics all around us? It turns out they're kind of like superheroes with secret identities. That plastic bottle, that non-stick pan, they all have real names. So today we're going to pull back the curtain and find out what they're really called.
Right? We use this stuff every single day, but we mostly just call them by their nicknames. But what if I told you that simple foam cup has a much longer, way more scientific name? It's true, and we're about to decode it.
Styrofoam, Teflon, PVC. These names are just so familiar, aren't they? But here's the thing. They're mostly just brand names, the public face of these materials. Behind each one, there's a more complex identity, a whole system for how they get their names. Let's break it down.
So the first and probably most logical way to name a polymer is to just name it after what it's made from. Think of it like a family name. It tells you exactly where it came from, what its origins are.
Okay, before we go any further, we have to talk about monomers. A monomer is the single, basic building block of a plastic. The analogy of a bead for a necklace is perfect. You can't do much with just one bead, but when you string a whole bunch of them together, you get something much bigger, a polymer.
Here's a perfect example. What you're looking at is a molecule called styrene. This is our monomer, our single little bead. This is the source.
Now, what do you think happens when you link a whole bunch of these styrene monomers together in a long chain? You get polystyrene. The prefix poly just means many, so it literally translates to many styrenes. See? Super simple, right? It's a really elegant way to name things.
And you see this pattern everywhere. Those plastic milk jugs, that's polyethylene. PVC pipes for plumbing? Well, PVC is just short for polyvinyl chloride. It's a great system, but it doesn't really tell you the whole story. What if you need more detail?
Well, sometimes you need to be incredibly precise. You need a name that acts like a chemical blueprint, a name that describes the exact structure of the molecule. And that's where the official scientific naming system comes into play.
So here's the trade-off. We have the common source-based name, polystyrene, which is pretty easy to remember. But then we have the scientific name, poly-1-phenylethene. It's a bit of a mouthful, for sure. But to a chemist anywhere in the world, that name is a perfect description of the molecule.
Now, it might seem really complicated, but there's a logic to it. Scientists just find the one part of the chain that repeats over and over. They give that part a name based on international chemistry rules. That's what IUPAC is, by the way. And then they just slap poly on the front. It's all about being as precise as humanly possible.
Okay, so we've got the common name from the source and the super specific scientific name, but what about the names we actually see in the store? Well, that brings us to our third and final naming system, the trade name.
And this is the absolute key difference. Trade names have basically nothing to do with scientific accuracy. They're all about brand recognition. They're designed to be catchy, easy to remember, and to make you, the consumer, feel confident about the product. It is pure marketing.
And here is where it all clicks. That crazy long scientific name, polytetrafluoroethylene, you know it as Teflon. Our old friend polystyrene becomes the famous styrofoam. And polymethylmethacrylate can be sold as either plexiglass or lucite. It's the exact same chemical, just with different brand names.
So now we have all the pieces of the puzzle. A single plastic can have a source name, a structure name, and a trade name. It's a lot to keep track of. So let's bring it all together and create a kind of Rosetta Stone, to help us translate between all these different names.
This table really puts it all in perspective. Just look at polystyrene. You've got its source name, its structure name, and its trade names. 3 different ways to talk about the same material. And check out PVC. It's so common that its source name, polyvinyl chloride, has just become its everyday name. This is exactly how all 3 systems overlap and work together out in the real world.
So really, every plastic has 3 different stories to tell. There's the story of its origin, which is told by its source name. Then there's the story of its design, told by its structure name. And finally, the story of its brand, which is told by its trade name, source, structure, and sales.
So we have these 3 different lenses to view a plastic's identity: its origin, its design, or its brand. For a scientist in a lab, that design, the structure, is everything. But for you or me in a store, the brand is often what matters most. So which story do you think is the most important? And does the name we choose to use actually change how we think about the material itself? Something to think about.